What is up, my beautiful gemstones? Welcome back to my channel, and if you're new here, thanks for checking us out. My name is Gemma Jade, but today we are going to be discussing spontaneous portals in the home. I was so excited to come across some actual people who have experienced spontaneous portals opening in their homes. And the main reason for that is because this is something I've tried to explain to so many of you so many times personally when you've come to me for help with seemingly random paranormal activity happening in your home. Portals can be ancient and really anything can activate them, but regardless of the reason they spontaneously pop up, they can be devastating and cause some really severe paranormal activity, which could then lead to some extreme spiritual issues in and on the people dealing with it. Most people can't see portals to other realms and dimensions, especially those that are in their homes. And for the most part, the majority of the population doesn't even know that they're there at all, nor can they determine where they are. They merely tell me that they know something's just off or just not right in some specific area of the house. So it's like they kind of know something's going on, but they can't physically see that there's a portal there. Portals could lead to other locations here in this realm. They can lead to other realms, timelines, or dimensions. And sometimes some of them lead to nowhere at all, which I think is somewhat scarier than almost anything else that I could ever imagine, like where they would lead to. Just into pitch black nothingness. I think that's scarier. Almost, anyway. However, I will be so bold as to say that almost all portals, no matter how long they've been there or where they're located, act as doorways to other worlds, realms, dimensions, and places on this plane of existence. That means that not only can we go through them, whether that be accidentally or willingly, but that other people, entities, and beings can as well. For most people, portals are nebulous things that one encounters in the woods or in some other remote and out-of-the-way location. However, I am so excited to explain to you all today with examples that this isn't always the case. In fact, a lot of the time, these phenomena can happen right in the comfort and safety of our own homes. So let's jump right in. Our first witness comes from Reddit, and their name is Gilgamesh V. Shambaba. And he explained that he was living in a small town when he had his experience. These events happened years before he finally got up the courage to get on the internet and talk about his story. It started one evening when he woke up in the bed in the middle of the night to what felt like something touching his head. No one else was there in the room with him, and he turned to look toward where it seemed as though the touch was coming from. He saw what he described as a random hole in the air in front of him. The hole wasn't round or oval shaped though, and our witness described it as more like square or like a rectangular hole. The scariest part of all of this was the fact that what looked like a man's arm and hand were reaching out to him out of the hole in the air, which, if you haven't guessed by now, was the spontaneous portal in his home. I'll let him explain it in his own words though, because this one was just weird. He said, quote, "The hole started drifting to the right and revolving toward me, and I saw two young men in some other room. One was sitting and working or typing or something, and the other guy was looking at what he was doing and looking at me and looking around my bedroom. I sat up on one arm watching them, and then I noticed that the light from their room was lighting up my room. I could see the ironing board to my left, my bookcase to the right, the floor, ceiling, and the door, which was closed. That was when I knew I was really awake, so I sat up some more. I think they were talking to each other, but I don't remember hearing them. I thought about getting out of bed and grabbing my clothes and just stepping through the hole into their room, but I chickened out because I wasn't sure if I would be able to get back or not. The hole started to revolve the other way until it was sideways to me again, and then all of a sudden it disappeared and the light was gone and it was dark again. Since I have quote-unquote night blindness, it was pitch dark to me. Finally, I decided that it had just been a weird dream, so I picked up the covers and laid down and turned on my side to go back to sleep, and that's when I realized I had been sitting up the whole time, so it had to have been real. Well, that's it. The hole had smooth sides and sharp corners, no glow or fog or anything. Looking back on it now, I think the two guys were panicking because they had seen and were trying to close the window or close the portal, however you want to say it. I've tried to tell people what happened and they just laugh at me. I know it happened. Now I want to know if it happened to other people and if anyone has reported it. I'm sure the two I saw repeated their little experiment, so there must be more witnesses somewhere." End quote. That was incredibly strange to me for many reasons, but mainly because it seemed as though he were seeing his own room in his own home, but in another reality or dimension. That's weird because while I know that other us's exist in other worlds and other realms all around us, what are the odds really that the room would look exactly the same on the other side of the portal? I don't pretend to have any answers because spiritual dimensions are more my thing, but I also wondered here how and why one of the other men's arm and hand went through the portal to touch the witness anyway, as he explained that they were both sitting there when he got up and looked inside. It's almost like they were trying to get his attention for some reason and that they were obviously cognizant that he existed there in the other realm. Very weird, but whatever happened here, it seems as though whoever is in control of these types of things saw what was going on, quickly intervened, and closed up the portal for good. This would stop any additional interactions from happening, but it also stops us from gaining any more information. Also, who's to say that in other realms and dimensions, human beings aren't more scientifically advanced than we are here and that they don't know how to access these other realms themselves, though they seemed panicked and, in my opinion, like they would possibly be in trouble or something, like maybe they have the know-how but they're not allowed. From Flashy Consequence 111 on Reddit, we have another strange story about a spontaneously appearing portal, and it happened in 2004 while our witness and her husband were relaxing out on the veranda of their home. She explained, quote, there was a fence about 5 meters / 15 feet away from us. All of a sudden, the side of this big tree next to the fence started moving. There was no wind, and the other trees were not moving, nor was the other side of the tree. My husband and I thought an animal was going to come out of it. After about 1 minute, a black hole appeared, and a man carrying some box or bag in both hands came out of the hole, ran across the fence for 3 meters / 9 feet, and then another hole appeared in front of him, and he went through that hole and disappeared completely. The trees near the second hole were moving and shaking before it appeared, and he ran into it, and it was shaking for about 30 seconds after it closed. The man was white with dark short hair, wearing a black and red flannel shirt and black pants, and looked like he was running from something. He was definitely in a panic. I was in shock, but I was amazed. I turned to my husband. He was looking at the fence, eyes wide open. I said, "Oh my God, did you see that?" He turned to me and said, "What?" I said, "That man came out of a wormhole and ran along the fence and went into another wormhole and disappeared. That's why the tree was shaking." He said, "When was the tree shaking?" "Nothing happened. We've just been sitting here." I was shocked. I was like, "What are you saying? You don't remember?" We had just been discussing how the tree was shaking and what animal we thought was going to come out of it. To clarify, we had never before or since had different recollections of what we had seen together. I have only told that story to my sister and my children. This is the first time publicly. There are definitely technologies we don't know about. I believe in wormholes and portals, and I know what I saw that day. End quote. This particular experience reminds me of all of the encounters I've collected and talked about throughout the years where people are in the woods or somewhere else and they randomly and very suddenly are somewhere else altogether. I wonder if that's the type of thing that was going on here. I will also say this is very similar to how I believe most Bigfoot creatures travel in and out of portals most of the time. There have been more stories about portals in homes that I've been made aware of that revolve around closets more than anything else or anywhere else in the home. This actually makes sense regardless of what you believe or what you believe in, because if you think about this community specifically and the role most closets play in general, it is normally the place where spooky things happen and where most entities try and hide. Demonic entities specifically are known for terrorizing humans from their closets. I found an account from True Ghost Tales that involves a witness who said her experience happened when she was just a little girl and watching television in her living room. Her mother was watching the TV with her, and they both suddenly heard her father yelling and screaming from another room in the home. He sounded terrified. I think I've covered this one in the Closet Entities video, but it's relevant here too, and I thought it was important enough to go over here again. They jumped up and ran towards where the screaming was coming from and were a bit surprised to find that her dad was in the bedroom, and it looked at first as though he were having some sort of heart attack or something like that, some sort of medical emergency. The door was locked and she and her mother screamed for the father to open it up and let them in. The odd thing about that detail is that there was no lock on that door at all, so the fact that it was unable to be opened as though it were locked makes this whole thing even more scary. The girl's father was a struggling alcoholic, so she and her mother also considered that maybe he was just drunk and freaking out somehow due to the fact as he'd been drinking heavily earlier in the night. Perhaps he was having some sort of mental breakdown or something. They really didn't know, but the way he was screaming and the fact that the door seemed locked from the inside really terrified them. Finally, they were able to force the door open, and when they did, they quickly saw that something even more frightening and bizarre than anything they'd been able to originally conceive was going on. I'll let her tell it. Our witness said, quote, My mom struggled for a few minutes trying to open the door. Finally, she managed to open the door, and we saw my father up in the air like if he was hanging from something. Then a few seconds later, he fell down. He was so scared that he sounded sober. He told us to get away from there, and he ran as far away from my room. When we saw my dad, he seemed almost pale. He had scratches on his chest as if he had gotten into a fight or something. My mom asked him, "What happened to you? Are you okay?" The only thing that came out of my father's mouth was, "The devil. The devil was trying to take me away with him." At first, I thought my dad was only saying that to scare me, but he was serious about it. He said that the devil wanted him and was trying to bite his neck. I thought to myself, it sounds more like a vampire than the devil to me. Why would the devil want to bite his neck anyways? End quote. So my first thought when I heard this was why our witness first thought that our father was purposely trying to scare her specifically. That was odd, but more so she's right in that it sounded more like a vampire. But if you're familiar with what we call devils and demons, you know they do tend to bite or eat the flesh, and there are so many other flesh-eating or flesh-biting entities out there. I've talked about them at length throughout numerous videos here. This story doesn't end there, though. The three of them went into the living room, and eventually they all fell asleep, probably just from the adrenaline crash. The next day, while he was nice and sober, her father told them exactly what had happened the night before. He explained that he'd been walking past his daughter's room when he saw her closet door was slowly opening on its own. He then heard what sounded like a male voice coming from the darkness inside of it. He then said something dark had emerged from the closet, and with that, he passed out completely. While he was telling the story at this point, he insisted they go into her room, into the closet, so he could better explain what he was telling them. This is where things got even more strange. Our witness said, quote, "We all went to my room, then my dad opened my closet door, and we saw this figure of a man standing inside my closet as if it were asleep. Its arms were on its chest, and he was all black with long fingernails, and he had wings." The weird thing about all of this is that a few days later, I saw it in my room. I was watching TV in the living room. We had the hall light on so that it could reflect light into my room. But that night, the light only reflected halfway. I saw a dark shadow standing in the middle of my room. Then he took his hand out and started moving his index finger, asking me to come with him with his reddish yellow eyes. I was so scared that I couldn't move at all. I was screaming for my parents, but they couldn't hear me at all. How could this be when they were just 10 feet away from me? Anyway, when I turned my head back to see him, he was already next to me. All he did to me was he lifted me up and kissed my forehead and my neck. Then he left, just like that. We never saw it again, but sometimes when I'm in the dark, I feel like someone is there with me, end quote. I was with her until she said they saw it just hanging there in the closet, right? And I think this is where my issue came in last time. You just see a creature sleeping in your closet, hanging there, and you're like, oh, let me just close the door and give it its privacy. I don't know what to believe about this one. You guys know I'm very reluctant to call people liars. I think maybe the first part happened, and possibly, in my opinion, the experiencer had to justify this somehow, so went on to maybe embellish a little bit. Other than that, though, I do think this could have been a vampiric entity or an actual vampire. And though this isn't the typical or usual experience of someone with a portal in their closet, I do believe most of this story, like I said. This portal was seemingly much more open and much more real seeming than most, but that, in my opinion, is more than likely because either the witness or she and both of her parents were some kind of sensitives with some sort of ability that made it all so much more detailed and easily accessible. This easily goes beyond hallucinations or overactive imaginations because all three of them saw it. Normally, lower vibrational entities will choose one person to torment, and they will stick with that one person, all the better if everyone else thinks the person is losing their mind because of it. Of course, I had to go to my favorite site, Phantoms and Monsters, to see if I could find any portals in the home encounter stories, and as always, I was not disappointed. This one happened in 2009 and involved some sort of menacing beastly creature in someone's closet. Our witness woke up at 3 in the morning one night, covered in sweat and in a panic he couldn't place. The inexplicable cold fear he was experiencing overwhelmed him immediately, and when he looked over at his brother, who was also asleep in the room with him, he was still sleeping soundly and didn't seem to have been disturbed by anything at all. He said there was also this heavy and very intense feeling of someone or something looming and lurking somewhere in his room. Most of you, or maybe even all of you, I'm sure know how this feels when you just know you aren't alone in a space or a room, even in your own home, and when you can just feel the energy and presence of someone or something there with you, and you know your feeling is right on, despite there being no other evidence that anyone or anything is there with you at all in the pitch black, and you're unable to see anything at all. It's just our instinct, and people with abilities, even if they're unaware that they have them, will absolutely know immediately and without a doubt when they're not alone. Our witness stopped for a moment and sat completely still and realized that he knew for sure that something was lurking around the large walk-in closet there in his bedroom. He explained what happened next by saying, quote, "I looked around in my room hoping to see my mom watching over us from the doorway of the closet. I don't know why I thought it'd be her, but I did. Since our night light was on, I could see things pretty clearly. I looked to my left to see a tall figure in our closet. It had an oval head with small eyes and appendages hanging from its face, almost like a scruffy beard, but it made more sense that it would be some type of structure. It looked over the both of us up and down. At first, I thought it was my mind playing tricks on me since I could be very imaginative. But what snapped me out of this is when it pushed some of the clothes hangers out of the way and the fact that the window was open. Its skin looked rough and pasty, almost like it was in a sauna for like 2 straight years. It caught a whiff of me being awake, and almost immediately I lost consciousness and lost control over my body. All accounts that were had from that night had not been fully remembered the following morning, besides the fact that my sheets were in my closet instead of on my bed," end quote. This one definitely intrigued me because of how absolutely bonkers it sounds. I've met so many people who have been afraid of coming forward with their experiences simply because they're worried about how the people they're telling their stories to will perceive them afterwards. I totally understand, and it's been something I've struggled with my entire life, that is talking about the things I'm seeing and hearing and the things I just inherently and intuitively know with no good or logical reason or explanation as to why or how I know the things I do, and with no evidence as to what I'm seeing. This one, in my opinion, is a case of an abduction, a supernatural one, and while I was initially on the fence as to whether or not it was extraterrestrials who were the culprits here, I can confidently say I don't think they were. Aliens or extraterrestrials have their own way of doing things, and popping up inside of people's closets and lurking just isn't how things are done for them, at least not for any species of ET I've ever heard or am familiar with. I have to admit, this one really freaked me out a little bit. Also from Phantoms and Monsters, and it's for me one of the most outlandish closet encounters I've ever heard in my life, is our next story. It was sometime around the year 1980, and our witness said he was very young at the time and shared a room with his brother. Again, this is a room with a very large walk-in closet, and it's worth mentioning that the witness in this case said he went on to become a professional paranormal investigator largely due to this particular incident. All those years ago, he said he was lying there in his bed in the dark and trying to fall asleep, but he was unnaturally restless that night for reasons he didn't know or understand. As he laid there, the closet door started to slowly creep open on its own, and he said of what happened next, quote, "One night as I was trying to get to sleep, my brother was already asleep, the door opened, and I know this sounds crazy, but out came Big Bird of the children's show Sesame Street. I remember being frightened at first, but others came out too, and they were very friendly and led me into the closet with them. All I remember at this point is that Big Bird gave me a flavored chapstick, most likely to ease my fear because at that time I loved chapstick, and they brought me back to my bed. I went to sleep very happy over the whole experience and was not afraid anymore. I put the chapstick under my pillow after taking a tiny nibble, leaving my teeth marks just to see if it would still be there in the morning. The next morning I checked, and lo and behold, the chapstick was there just like I remembered, and at that moment I knew for a fact it had not been a dream. If it were not for that chapstick, the experience probably would not have stayed with me all these years. I tried to tell my brother, but he laughed it off, as anyone would, because it sounds totally crazy. Now, after reading the other accounts of similar experiences, I am wondering if it was an abduction disguised as a friendly interaction," end quote. This one also made me think of alien abductions, and I'm left wondering whether or not this really had anything to do with the closet, or if that was just a memory placed inside of his mind by his actual abductors. Obviously, whatever entity this thing was had projected itself in this image to try and lull the boy into a false sense of comfort and security, which many extraterrestrial species are definitely known to do in these situations. I will say, though, it's possible that there's a realm out there in the universe somewhere where creatures like the puppets from Sesame Street actually exist. I also wonder where the creative geniuses that come up with those kinds of shows get their ideas from, and I know for a fact that musicians and actors, etc., who pass away guide and help up-and-comers on this planet in this realm all of the time. I honestly have no idea, but if you're still here, I appreciate you, and we're going to discuss one more case before we end. From the site Your Ghost Stories, I came across an encounter from the state of Pennsylvania, and our witness said at the time it happened, she was just moving out of her grandmother's home. She lived there for a long time, but once she started the process of moving everything out and after she left for good, she began having extremely real-seeming and vivid dreams of some sort of demonic entity or creature lurking around in the closet in her bedroom at her grandmother's house. She said the nightmares only started when she moved out of the house and was no longer sleeping in that room, and she'd never had them before while she was living there. Each night, the nightmares grew in intensity and realness, and this is when she admitted that she'd always known the house had been haunted, but she'd never really been bothered by it much. After going through her encounter quickly, I noticed she's talking about things that happened in the home. So just to be clear, she moved out and started having these terrible nightmares about the demon in the closet. And then for whatever reason, she moved back into her grandmother's home later on, and that's where her encounters start. She said, quote, "We just recently moved back in October. Now, I've always known this house was haunted. Everyone has. I've had so many different experiences. For another story, I assure you. Everything seemed fine and normal. The house is old. It creaks all night long. You hear someone calling your name. For me, it's Belle. Nothing unusual. I walked past the room I used to sleep in, now my uncle's room, the other day, and I felt instantly watched. Chills ran down my spine. I felt so much danger. I quickly scurried down the stairs and forgot about it not too long after. I would walk by the room all the time. It's en route to my room. Every time I walk by, the door creaks open, even if it's shut the whole way. It takes force to open that door. It's an old house. I was carrying my cat from my room to the living room with me one morning last week. As we walked past my uncle's room, a deep, low, frightening growl came from my cat. Then she hissed the meanest hiss as she kept her eyes locked on the room. The door was wide open. Nobody was inside. Recently, my mom has been feeling it too. The door is open slowly when she walks by, and she feels cold eyes watching her," end quote. Unfortunately, we're left wondering what happened next, if anything, and if the nightmares continued, because there's no more information at all given in this report. However, I would bet everything I have that this woman eventually went on to encounter this demonic entity in real life in her waking hours at some point or another, especially after telling her story on the internet and exposing it. For whatever reason, her leaving the home initially seemingly triggers something to come through the closet. She possibly unknowingly, spontaneously opened a portal somehow, more than likely has some sort of extrasensory ability herself, and unfortunately, I believe she will be stuck with whatever this is and whatever else decides to come through that portal/closet until she finds some help getting her abilities under control. That's just my opinion though, and my 2 cents won't make you any richer. So let me know what you all think in the comments below, please. That's all I have for you today, guys. Please give this video a big thumbs up if you enjoyed the content, if you enjoyed hanging out with me. Spread the love by sharing this video. Subscribe if you haven't already. Please make sure your notification bell is turned on and switched to all. Thank you so much for your patience as I move through a lot of transitions with my career, my brand, this channel. I know sometimes the last few minutes of the video have been cutting out. I'm trying to get back to the paid version of the editing software, but that's hard when I'm only making $100 a month, bare minimum for YouTube to pay me. No donations, nothing else. Speaking of donations, I have updated my Amazon wish list gift link, and there's really like 20 things on there. I'm adding things every day, so maybe by the time you see this, there will be more. If you're interested in sending me a Christmas gift or just because gift, you guys ask me every year. That is the only reason I'm putting it out there. The new link will be in the description box. Also, if you want me to get paid for the work that I do and you're able to financially contribute, please donate through PayPal or Cash App, because if you donate through anything else, there's always a percentage taken, especially YouTube, that takes 49% of all of my earnings, including donations. So my PayPal and Cash App will be in the description box and on the screen here. Email me for any and all correspondence, information about products I sell, services I offer, personal intuitive oracle reading, birth charts, spiritual helper boxes, crystal infused manifestation intention sprays, oil rollers, autographed copies of any of my books, GemmaJadeParanormal@gmail.com. I do not do PMs, DMs, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram messages. You have to email me if you want to discuss something like that, or just speak to me for any reason. Go to Amazon and type in Gemma Jade Books for my entire full collection on Kindle and paperback. My books are also available on Audible. I put most of the links in the description box with 14 books times 3. That's a lot of links to have to leave. So if I missed one, or if you're looking for a specific book, or if you don't know what you're looking for, you just want to see my collection, Amazon, Gemma Jade Books, you'll find it all right there. I do have a new book that's supposed to be coming out in December. It was supposed to be released around Halloween. Now they told me December, so I'll keep you guys posted and updated on that. Uninvited Visitors is the working title. Encounters with Extraterrestrial Entities. So we'll see where that goes. I always appreciate your guys' support when it comes to my writing career. It means so much to me. Be kind to each other, guys. It doesn't cost anything. Be kind to yourselves and never accept anything less than others being kind to you. If nobody told you today, you're amazing. You got this. I believe in you. I got your back. Don't forget to hype the video. Y'all got me from 50 to 100 average views to over 1,000 in 48 hours just by hitting that button. If you want to help me, hit the hype button. Always go in grace, smile at a stranger, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.